Chevy Control here again. Earlier in the flight, you'll recall at the start of the second revolution, we had a reference to several objects that the crew spotted. This was in the area of Antigua. Due to a mechanical breakdown, we did not have that portion of the tape available for you.
ISS cameras captured a greenish, shimmering structure estimated at 3,000 miles wide. No space agency confirmed it. No telescope network reported detecting it. No official explanation has ever been given.
Okay, copy. The next is to mate P5 to J5. Okay. There's some kind of reflective structure.
That photograph is one point in a series of observations from the ISS, from named astronauts, and from 2,700 days of Palomar Observatory archives, observations that each individually could be explained away. Taken together, they raise a question that keeps getting harder to close.
During my flight on Gemini 4 in 1965, I saw an object in space fairly close to our spacecraft that I could not identify.
We're going to move on now to that mysterious close encounter. This object you see here was caught on camera flying past the SpaceX rocket just minutes after liftoff last week.
3,000-mile-wide UFO set of mysterious images showing a gigantic object near Earth has once again captured the attention of space enthusiasts around the world. The images were linked to cameras aboard the International Space Station, and it shows a strange greenish shimmering structure that some experts claim is nearly 3,000 miles wide. The size alone is enough to raise eyebrows. If the object is truly out there, it would be larger than many countries, and that makes it very impossible to ignore. But despite its incredible dimensions, the image didn't attract a lot of attention when it was first noticed. That all changed in 2020, when the photo was leaked online and started circulating across social media platforms and online forums. But as the images spread, so did the debate. Many people quickly thought that the pictures were fake. Critics argue that a spacecraft or object that large couldn't have appeared near Earth without being detected by astronomers, satellites, or simply the ordinary skywatchers. However, not everyone is critical of this sighting. Other experts and ufologists believe that the photograph could be real evidence of extraterrestrial activity. And this is even scarier. If an unknown object of this size actually exists, then what is it doing close to Earth? Is it observing humanity, carrying out research, or preparing for some form of contact? These theories have led to many discussions, with some even comparing the situation to the classic science fiction stories involving aliens and spacecrafts. Others say this might simply be a passing national phenomenon, a camera glitch, or an optical effect that they didn't understand. Still, this sighting by the ISS remains shocking because it raises the question of whether we are alone in the universe. Despite all the pictures online of this UFO, there's no confirmed evidence that this is a real physical structure, but there's also no evidence that it isn't. Interestingly, this is only just one of the many sightings spotted by the ISS in the past few years. In 2017, another shocking sighting happened that has left astronauts and space experts investigating for years. March 2017, ISS spacewalk.
Okay, Wheels, I'm going to put a red on the front flap of this, and then I'll bring the red around to the back of the shroud. I'll see how that works, if that's all right with you.
In March 2017, a routine spacewalk outside the International Space Station unexpectedly became the center of a UFO mystery that is still fascinating people today. Astronauts were carrying out maintenance work about 400 kilometers above when cameras captured something unusual in the background. At first, it looked like it was simply a dark object floating silently through space. But what really caught attention was the way it moved. It didn't tumble through the space like ordinary space debris, but instead, it seemed to rotate slowly and maintain a position near the station for a long time. The footage immediately spread from the ISS live stream to the Word. UFO enthusiasts were excited about this. Many viewers and experts argued that the object didn't behave like a piece of junk or a discarded part from a spacecraft. There were suspicions that that was an alien spaceship watching the astronauts as they stayed in space. Since the object remained visible for hours, there were even more questions. Was this a coincidence, or was something else happening around Earth? That was when some started to suspect that the famous Black Knight satellite was involved. The Black Knight satellite is one of the most enduring space mysteries ever discussed. According to the legend, it is an ancient artificial satellite that has been orbiting Earth for thousands of years. Some versions say that this satellite has been watching humanity for 13,000 years. Others say that this was an alien probe sent to monitor alien civilization. The mystery combines reports of strange radio signals, unusual objects seen in orbit, and photographs taken during various space missions. One of the reports that strongly support this theory is that of Nikola Tesla and Guglielmo Marconi, which claim that they received unexplained radio signals from space. They also mentioned that there were mysterious, long-delayed echoes, unusual radio signals that seemed to return much later than expected. So, when viewers saw the mysterious object near the ISS in 2017, many immediately suspected that it was related to the Black Knight, and this was a very exciting idea. Imagine an ancient alien machine silently orbiting Earth, watching humanity develop from the first civilizations to the modern space age. However, the scientists and image analysts offered a much simpler explanation. Experts who examined the footage noted that the object appeared small and close to the ISS. Instead of being a giant alien satellite, it might have been a piece of equipment associated with the station itself. During spacewalks, tools, covers, shields, and protective hardware are sometimes moved around. In rare cases, they can also drift away. The lighting conditions in space also make ordinary objects look strange and much larger than they actually are. Another important point is that no radar systems, telescopes, or tracking networks reported a mysterious satellite matching the Black Knight description near the ISS at the time. If a large unknown object were truly sharing the station's orbit, many independent observers around the world would likely have detected it. The International Space Station has recorded a lot of strange footage while floating in outer space, and between 2015 and 2020, it has proof of shocking happenings out there. ISS footage, 2015 to 2020. Between 2015 and 2020, several ISS videos started circulating online that showed strange bright lights moving near the International Space Station. At first, these clips look mysterious. You can see glowing dots, sometimes appearing in groups, sometimes moving in a loose formation near Earth's curved horizon. These strange lights were filmed in space, so viewers immediately suspected that something strange was happening out there. Ufologists immediately thought that this was more than enough evidence of extraterrestrial activity. One of the most discussed examples come from footage recorded by astronauts and ISS cameras showing multiple luminous objects drifting close to the station. In some of the clips, the lights seem to be moving in a coordinated way, almost as if they were dancing around the ISS. In fact, the lights look like they were intelligently controlled. But experts couldn't tell whether they were stars, satellites, or reflections. Or worse, something extraterrestrial. Of course, there are experts like astronomer and image analyst Mark D'Antonio, which give a simpler explanation. He constantly argues that most of these strange lights aren't extraterrestrial or separate flying objects. Instead, they are usually caused by materials released by the ISS itself, or by nearby human-made objects reflecting sunlight in unusual ways. He argues that in space, even the smallest objects or spots can look dramatic. There's also the explanation that these strange lights are related to routine ISS activity. The station regularly releases small amounts of material, such as water vapor, waste venting, or coolant byproducts. When these materials are released, they do not just disappear. In the vacuum of space, they can form clouds or clusters that briefly reflect sunlight. From the perspective of ISS cameras, these clouds can look like glowing or moving objects. Another factor is camera optics. ISS cameras are extremely sensitive designed to capture faint details of Earth and space. But this also means they can create artifacts, reflections, or lens flares that appear like objects. When sunlight hits the camera at a certain angle, it can create bright spots that move as the camera moves. These effects often confuse viewers who are not familiar with how space imaging works. Mark D'Antonio also suggests that in some cases, what people think is a floating object might actually be a small piece of debris or hardware near the station. The ISS is surrounded by a complex environment. Insulation pieces, tools, or fragments from past missions sometimes drift nearby. Because of the lighting in orbit, even a small object can look large and bright for a short time. Although he and many other experts have said this, ufologists still continue to look into these because of how organized these lights were. Who's to say something extraterrestrial is not watching us? And it seems like the government knows a bit about it too, as in 2016, they quickly cut off the feed to stop us from seeing something shocking. 2016 ISS livestream. Cut off. In 2016, a live video stream from the International Space Station caught a moment that quickly became a favorite topic among ufologists. The ISS usually broadcasts live views of Earth through external cameras, letting people around the world watch clouds, oceans, and the curve of the planet in real time. Most of the time, the feed is calm and predictable. But in one particular broadcast, something strange happened. A bright object appeared in the distance. At first, it looked like a small, glowing point above Earth's horizon. But as the seconds passed, some viewers believed it was moving downward, almost as if it was descending toward the planet. People started to pay attention to the video. Was it a meteor entering the atmosphere, a satellite falling, or something more unknown? Then something shocking happened that made the moment even more mysterious. They didn't expect that the live stream would suddenly cut off. To everyone watching from around the world, the timing was very suspicious. The object was visible, and just as it seemed to approach Earth, the video feed switched to a blue screen or stopped instantly. This created a wave of speculation. As you can expect, a lot of people suspected that NASA deliberately ended the broadcast to keep the object a secret. But if you look into it, the situation becomes less dramatic. Live stream interruptions are not unusual at NASA, so it might just be a coincidence. Interestingly, even if the live stream cutting off was simply a coincidence, how do you explain the strange object recorded in the first place? NASA has not yet been able to explain where this object came from, or what it really was. Some suggest it could have been a satellite reflecting sunlight. Others think it might have been space debris burning or passing through Earth's upper atmosphere. Meteors are also a strong possibility, since small space rocks frequently enter the atmosphere and create bright flashes when they heat up. Still, because the footage is brief and lacks detailed tracking data, no expert can definitively identify it with full certainty. That uncertainty is what keeps the discussion alive. So, if you ever watch the 2016 live stream, you might also find yourself asking what this strange object was. 2014, live stream cut off. This is not the first time the ISS has suddenly cut the live stream when something was about to happen, as in 2014. There was another shocking sighting that ended in a cut. Some ufologists have revealed that they spotted UFOs on the ISS feed before it was suddenly shut down. This has caused many to believe that NASA's live stream sometimes shows strange, unknown objects near the space station, and those objects might be UFOs. Most of this footage shows something large and unusual moving in space. Many times, these footage don't show any known aircraft or satellite. Instead, they look like something strange and out of this world. But why does NASA keep shutting down the feed? You might not know this, but in the past, NASA has considered shutting down the ISS live feed. When something unusual appears on the stream, the video will immediately cut to blank gray or a blue screen. This isn't actually random, as many ufologists believe that this might be a way to hide what they are really seeing. This seems like evidence that something is being covered up at the ISS. existence of transients. Over 107,000 unidentified signals called transients were detected across 2,700 days of data from the Palomar Observatory. On the days that followed a nuclear weapons test, the likelihood of detecting one of those transients rose by 68%. A researcher and collaborator compiled those 2,700 days of observations from old archives, especially the Palomar Observatory. For each day in the dataset, they recorded whether three things were present: nuclear weapons tests, transients detected on photographic plates, and UFO or UAP reports from an older UFO study database. The dataset included about 134 nuclear tests spread across the time period. It also included a much larger number of detected transients, over 107,000 in total. These transients were short-lived signals or bright points that appeared on photographic plates, identified using an automated system. The statistical comparison between days with nuclear tests and days without them produced the key finding. Transients appeared on about 11% of normal days. However, when a nuclear test had occurred within the previous 24 hours, transients appeared on about 19% of those days. This difference is presented as a 68% increase in the likelihood of observing a transient after a nuclear test. The nuclear tests in the dataset come from different global sites, including locations in the United States, Russia, Kazakhstan, the Pacific, and other testing regions. And even more interesting, all these transients are not evenly distributed across all conditions. Some say that transients decrease in frequency when observations are in Earth's shadow. This might be a sign that the objects causing the transients are reflective and located in orbit, since they would only be visible when illuminated by sunlight. With over 100,000 detected transients out there, the question remains what they really are and if they came from outer space. That correlation runs across more than 2 decades of archived data. The Apollo missions would produce something different, not one observation, but a continuous pattern of them from multiple astronauts across multiple missions. Apollo missions. During Apollo 17 in 1972, the last mission to land humans on the moon, astronauts described seeing very bright particles moving past their windows during spacecraft maneuvers. One astronaut said it looked like a field of fragments drifting around them, while others compared the scene to fireworks. At times, the lights appeared jagged, bright, and moving in different directions. Some of the objects seemed to flash or sparkle as they rotated in space, making the view outside the spacecraft unusual and hard to explain at first glance. The astronauts discussed that these objects might be observing them in real time. Of course, others wanted to believe that this was a simple situation. It could be pieces of ice, paint, or debris from the spacecraft itself, most likely the rocket stages used earlier in the mission. This idea made sense because spacecraft often shed small materials during flight, and sunlight can make even tiny particles shine brightly in space. Mission Control also suggested that reflections or exhaust particles from thrusters could explain what they were seeing. But the answer was not always enough. And weirdly, the crew never agreed on what the UFO looked like, even if they were all in space together. At one point, an astronaut mentioned that some objects appeared to flash in a pattern, almost like they were rotating or reflecting light in a structured way. These observations added uncertainty, even though no one claimed the objects were definitely unknown technology or anything outside normal physics. Similar situations have been spotted on other Apollo missions. During Apollo 11 and Apollo 12, astronauts mentioned brief flashes of light and strange glowing points while resting or looking out into space. Some of these were later linked to possible causes like light reflections inside the cabin, cosmic rays hitting the eye, or electrical effects in instruments. Still, not every observation could be clearly matched to a single cause. The Apollo 17 crew also reported difficulty sleeping because of repeated flashes they saw in the dark cabin or outside the spacecraft. One astronaut described a bright flash that appeared suddenly, like a headlight in space. These moments stood out because they were unexpected, especially during quiet periods of the mission when no major operations were taking place. But at the end of the day, there will always be some experts who try to explain using normal belief. One of the scientists looking at this report could come up with natural or technical explanations. They claimed it could be ice crystals, dust, fuel particles, sunlight reflection, and instrument effects. The environment around a spacecraft is full of small particles and extreme lighting conditions, which can make simple debris look unusual or dramatic. Still, what makes the Apollo reports interesting is not just the sightings themselves, but how clearly the astronauts describe them in real time. They were trained observers, and their logs show honest attempts to understand what they were seeing while it was happening. Even when explanations were suggested later, some details remain open to interpretation. ISS Reflections 2020. And then in 2020, several videos and live streams from the International Space Station showed strange lights and moving reflections outside the window. The lights were definitely unusual, and no so-called normal explanations would cut it this time. Russian cosmonaut Ivan Venger was aboard the ISS, orbiting Earth at high speed and recording a time-lapse video of the southern lights. The footage was meant to capture the beauty of the aurora over the Antarctic region, but something unexpected appeared in the frames. 5 bright objects were moving across the edge of the planet, all spaced at similar distances like they were flying in formation. Wagner posted the video and asked what the public thought. Could it be a meteor, satellite, or something else that he could not explain? Because the ISS moves very fast around Earth, the camera captures scenes in a compressed time format, which can make objects appear more dramatic or structured than they really are. In this case, the 5 objects only showed up for a few seconds in the time-lapse, but they were clear enough to get attention worldwide. Space agencies and analysts quickly looked at the footage. One of the strongest explanations is that the objects were satellites passing in orbit, likely part of a newly deployed satellite group. In 2020, large numbers of satellites were being launched into low Earth orbit, and they often travel in visible clusters right after deployment. From the ISS, these can appear as bright points moving together in a straight line, especially when sunlight reflects off their surfaces at the right angle. Another explanation is that what Wagner saw was not a single object or structured formation at all, but a visual effect caused by the camera setup. The video was created from frames taken at intervals and then sped up into a smooth sequence. That process can create the illusion of evenly spaced motion, even when objects are actually separated in time and distance. Small reflections, lens effects, or particles near the station can also briefly appear as bright moving dots against the dark background of space. The context of the video also matters. The ISS often captures unusual visual events because it is looking down at Earth through layers of atmosphere, reflected light, and fast-changing lighting conditions. Auroras themselves are active and shifting, and when combined with time-lapse recording, the scene can become visually confusing. Bright flashes, streaks, or aligned lights can sometimes be the result of how light interacts with a camera sensor rather than physical objects moving in formation. After analysis, most official and scientific explanations lean toward normal orbital activity rather than unknown phenomena. The leading interpretation remains that the lights were either satellites or space debris reflecting sunlight as they passed through the camera's field of view. No evidence has been found that suggests anything unusual or non-human in origin. That doesn't stop the video from gaining a lot of attention, as very few people actually believe the government narrative of what the object could be. Gemini 4. During this flight, something unusual was reported over the region near Hawaii, an observation that later became known as the cylindrical object sighting. According to McDivitt's own account, while his fellow astronaut Ed White was resting, he noticed a strange white object outside the spacecraft. He described it as cylindrical in shape, with what looked like an arm or a stick-like extension coming out of it. It was not moving like a typical piece of debris he was familiar with, and for a moment, it caught his full attention. Imagine looking out of a spacecraft window at 28,000 kilometers per hour and suddenly seeing something you cannot immediately identify. That was the situation he described. McDivitt tried to take photographs of the object using the onboard camera, but space photography in 1965 was extremely difficult. The lighting conditions were harsh, the object was moving quickly, and the camera settings were not adjusted in time. The resulting images were unclear and did not provide a sharp view of what he saw. Because of this, the object could not be confirmed visually by others later in a definitive way. The Palomar Observatory data shows a 68% increase in unidentified signals the day after a nuclear test. The photograph James McDivitt took through the window of Gemini 4 has never been definitively identified. The 3,000-mile-wide structure in the 2020 ISS images has no official accounting. These are not the same mystery, but none of them has been closed. What do you think the ISS actually found? Leave your thoughts below.